Thank you for listening to this podcast. This podcast session is from the In3 sessions from June 2021, and the topic is about ESRs, which is actually, we complain a lot that we use too many acronyms. So an ESR is an early stage researcher, and it actually changes in time what that means. So what it means in the EU now is basically PhD students. So we're asking the question to the PhD students in the In3 project, which is a Marie Curie fellowship program. Why did you choose a PhD? And is that for good or for bad? Or what was your rationale? And basically what your next steps might be in your career. I said when this project started that the fact that we wrote it and we were given it, there was 15 PhD students were employed, but many others had applied. And actually some of the people who weren't employed got in this project were employed in other projects around that. Well, anyway, my statement at the beginning was doing a PhD in any case will change your life, for the good or bad, but doing it like this in a Marie Curie fellowship where you actually have to leave the country where you were living in before, usually your home country, to another country, definitely has a massive impact on your life. And again, it's not necessarily a positive thing, but we hope that there's lots of positives taken out of that. So I guess we'll go, Max, maybe you can fill in where I missed. He's nodding.
Yeah, definitely I will, Paul. So I fully agree with that. Just recently, I was listening to a radio show which is called The French from the Foreign Country. And that's their usual topic, to have French living abroad, telling their experience of that. And I'll see whether you back up that. But a lot of them say that the beauty of living your own country is also realizing what is not so bad in your country of origin, actually. This comparison is also, because French, in particular, French like to be critical about their own country. Probably a lot of others have the same feeling, and living it sometimes makes you realize that not everything is that bad where you are.
So yeah, and we have an extremely multicultural, or let's say multi-geographical PhD students here, also the PIs. And the good thing about the Marie Curie, it doesn't limit people to apply from within Europe. They can apply also from outside of Europe, and we've quite a few people who applied also from outside of Europe. But their cultural experiences are then often a bit more extreme than people who live in Europe, because generally people who live in Europe know a little bit about the other European countries. So we'll just start one by one, and you don't have to talk too much if you don't want. I guess topics will come back up and we can come back to you. So if you want to talk, just for myself and Max, maybe you can make your camera on. So we'll start with Sarah. Sarah, with a Z, as my pronunciation. So Sarah, let's hear, why did you choose a PhD? Immediate feeling. I know you're not finished yet, but are you happy you did it? And maybe just a quick few comments about your next steps.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And thank you for pronouncing my name after 3 years correctly. That was really big progress. Thank you. So actually, for me, Marie Curie PhD position would be the best option, because at the same time, I left my country and I found many friends from all over the world.
Well, maybe you tell the audience which country you left and which country you moved to, Sarah.
Yeah. I'm from Iran. So I've lived in Iran, and now I'm in Vienna, in Austria. And I've worked with people from all over the world, in students and PIs, supervisors, and it has been a big experience for me during this time. So thanks to these kinds of projects. The reason that I chose to do the PhD was that at the beginning, I was thinking that if I do a PhD, I would do a really big project, and I would be like the people who I was always following in the papers, who are working specifically in endothelial cells and publish really, really good research reports and things like this. By doing a project, PhD project, I learned that it's not only important to grow in the field of vascular system or endothelial cells, the importance is that every small steps that you take is valuable. And the value of science is just taking right steps and finding the good answers to the small mistakes that you could have never imagined you could make them. And I think for me, it was the biggest lesson. So maybe we can continue, and then if something reminds to my mind, I will come back.
Yeah, maybe Max, myself and you moderate this together, so we have a nice complement of our characteristics. I'll just do the next one. So I'll move on to Sarah then with S.
So it was why you chose to do a PhD and some other questions.
Well, there's three kind of we want to get out of this. So why did you do a PhD? Were you satisfied? Did it meet your expectations? And what are your next steps? But not necessarily all in one go. So you can address any one of those things. Or if you want to say something completely different, slightly on topic would be good though.
So yeah, for me, why I chose to do a PhD during my master's, I always, like a lot of people coming from biomedical sciences are pursuing a PhD afterwards. And so during my master's, a lot of people were already thinking about that. And I asked myself the question, okay, would I like to do that? And some people told me, okay, if you like doing research, you should consider going for a PhD. And then how did I get to doing a PhD in a European project? It was also actually just one of my colleagues who mentioned, look at this amazing looking IPSC PhD project within Europe, Marie Skłodowska Career Actions project. So you will have a lot of different colleagues and opportunities and trainings. And that's how I decided to start doing a PhD. And then for me, maybe on why or where I come from Belgium. And where did I do my PhD? In France, in the north of France. So the cultural change was not that big. And also I was the closest to home of all the PhD students. But still, it was also a great time of personal growth. And I've been looking back to the start of my PhD during the last days, and I realized that I've learned a lot, but not only on scientific level, but also on personal level. So that was a great experience.
Yeah, just to add on that, you did your PhD in my lab, north of France, but you had a master with some experience in iPSC in brain cells, and then you apply for a very fancy position in a famous lab with a very good PI, which was not mine, of course. And this one was in Switzerland. And it's only because Marie Gabriela opted for someone else that I got the pleasure of having you in my lab. So next speaker will then be Ivo. And Ivo, you will have to remind everyone who you are, where you came from, which is already quite challenging to identify already, and where you did your PhD.
So my name is Ivo Jibrovski. I come from North Macedonia, which is a small country at the north of Greece. When I was 12 years old, I had the privilege to move to France with my family, and I basically grew up in an international environment. So when you start adopting the international culture, you kind of get used to being in an international environment, and you want to stay there to meet people from all around the world. Then I studied biology during my university degree, and I chose biology because I was interested in aging particularly. And during my courses, I found out about stem cells, particularly this one paper about making cerebral organoids from iPSCs by this scientist called Madeleine Lancaster. And when I read this paper, I was completely mind blown. And I knew I wanted to work in this field, in stem cells. So I purposely chose my path to end up working with stem cells for my PhD. And for this, I did my master's internships in stem cell labs. And once I got to the PhD stage, I was just sending random emails to people all around the world, to people that work with stem cells that I would like to be part of their lab. And by chance, I emailed Lau, who was part of the In3 project, and he gave me this opportunity. And I can say that it exceeded my expectations by far, because not only did I stay in an international environment, because I did my PhD in Newcastle, and the UK is full of people from all around the world, because people generally speak English, so they choose the UK as their first option. And yeah, the traveling, going in different labs, learning from different people, the whole experience for me was absolutely amazing. I wouldn't say it's the case for everyone, because we're quite lucky to be in such a consortium, to be able to share knowledge, and yeah, for me it was a very, very positive experience. It exceeded by far my expectations, and I'm very glad I did it, and I will definitely continue working in science. Recently started a company called In3 Solutions to continue this legacy of In3 project, and yeah, I'm definitely planning on continuing work in science and with stem cells. So for me, it was great. That's my experience.
So then we'll have Carolina.
Hi there. So I actually didn't want to do a PhD. So I finished, I'm from Portugal. So I did the bachelor and the master in Portugal. And then I stayed 1 year in the lab that I did my internship for the master thesis. And I was like, well, no, this is not for me. I don't want this. I mean, in Portugal doing science, I mean, there's great scientists, don't take me wrong, but there's not a lot of money that is put into science in Portugal. Crisis, yada, yada. So it's a very, very competitive environment, and that doesn't necessarily bring always the best on people. So I was like, yeah, no, maybe not for me. I still wanted to stay in science. So I ended up by doing an internship in a startup in Spain. And then I had also the opportunity to do an internship in the Joint Research Center from the European Commission. And once I was visiting a friend, and she was like, I'm doing this PhD. It's very nice because I get to travel a lot, and I'm in contact with people working in different areas, and it's very nice. And she was actually doing a Marie Curie. And I was like, well, if it's to ever do a PhD, I think it's this one that I want. And this was in 2015. And then I was in the Joint Research Center, and Susanna, actually, that is also here, she told me about the In3 project and that I should apply. And I was like, well, I don't know. But in the end, I was actually looking for a position for after that traineeship, and all the positions I wanted to apply to, they required the PhD. So I was like, okay, let's give it a try. And it actually was the best decision I made in my life, I think, because I got the position, luckily, thanks to Marigab, that she accepted me. And it has been a great opportunity to work with people from different backgrounds, and not only scientific backgrounds, but actually cultural backgrounds. That I'm European, as Paul said, we are very used to the European environment. And although we are from different countries, we are very similar, and we share a lot of history together. So we can basically enter in a conversation very quick. We just need, that thing that I learned in history like 15 years ago. And then we start. But actually learning how to communicate with people from different cultural, like really different cultural backgrounds, it's been one of the best of this project. And also learning how to work with people from different scientific backgrounds, like people from in silico. It was the first time I had to explain what I do in the lab to people that never been in a lab. And I mean, they know theoretically what we do, but then to explain what we do in our daily day, it's very interesting. And it was not easy, but I think we did a good job on that. So I'm very happy that I did this, that I'm in this PhD. I hope to finish it soon. And I think it will give me an advantage in the market, because I don't want to stay in academia. So I hope that being exposed to this environment helps me find a job after, and research and development. And if I have to ask, well, in Roche, if we are here talking in France.
Oh, thanks, Carolina. I mean, I guess that's nice what you said, because I guess that's one of the main motivations from the EU to have these Marie Curie training networks, especially on the PhD level, is that people go and live in other countries, either neighboring countries or countries far away, and are exposed to the culture there, the history there, but also to other cultures, because usually these labs are multicultural and have different people from different countries, even European, but also outside, living there. So, kind of a one world policy in a way. But it might be like that at home anyway. You might, if you worked in a lab in Portugal, you probably would have met people from different countries, but it's very different to live in a different country. Let's move on to Christian. So what's your feelings on any of those things we're talking about?
Okay, cool. So I am from Croatia, and my project was in Italy, and I'm still working on my PhD. Hope to complete it soon. We will see how it goes. And so, well, one thing I want to start with is that maybe wasn't emphasized enough. The PhD that we were doing here is very different from a regular PhD. But for example, very big emphasis in the project was in the collaboration between different labs and in integrating in vitro in silico. I don't think this is the case for most people that I see around that are doing their PhDs. So this was very interesting for me. And when I applied for this position, I was also having similar thoughts that I didn't necessarily want to do a regular PhD. I was very interested in the concept of this collaborative experience. And with that, I was very happy in this project. It definitely met my expectations. And I guess it was basically what I expected. It was, I would say very challenging in a good way. So that was really great. And well, another point that I don't know whether everybody would agree, but for sure, I think Carolina mentioned something similar. The cultural aspect of this, I don't think was very, within Europe, I feel like it's very similar in some sense in most places. And for me, when I applied for the position, and as I said, I was applying specifically to several Marie Curie projects, I was in Australia. And even at that time, I felt like the whole cultural aspect between Australia and Europe is like very, very different. And then within Europe, all of these places have similar vibe. So therefore, the cultural challenge was not very. It wasn't something very specific for me. But for sure, for people coming outside of Europe, it was much bigger challenge. And that was just something interesting that I wanted to point out.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Max, back to you as moderator.
Yeah, so next will be Cormac then.
So I'm Cormac. I'm from Ireland originally. I'm doing my PhD here in Amsterdam with Paul. And
that was just a complete accident, right?
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, he'll get insulted by this, but I didn't know Jennings is an Irish name, so I did not know he was Irish when I applied for it.
That is insulting. Thank you.
Yes. But I started off in my undergraduate in zoology, and then in a developmental biology lecture fell in love with the iPS cells, as many others who've heard about it here. And then I was faced with a challenge of, I knew all about animal migration and sexual selection and a little bit less about cell culture. So I went on, did a master's and then an internship in actually a partner organization here in Biotalentum. And when I saw there was a Marie Curie project with iPS cells, I jumped at it. And my initial worry when I came over here was first being able to pronounce half the words in my project title. And 4 years on, I can basically get glomerulus most of the time. But I was really expecting to learn loads more new cell culture techniques, loads more new about the science side of it. But what I wasn't expecting so much was how much other things I was going to learn when I started. And from the bat, I showed up here, and what was the first thing I had to do? I had to help set up the first meeting to arranging talks and hotels and all of these different things, which I initially thought, oh, this is an interesting thing that won't really come up again in my time in my time in science. But actually, that kind of organization of groups and of conferences has come up again and again, and is actually now I'm working with Evo, is now part of a spin-off business that is coming from the In3. So I would say starting a PhD, you might expect one amount of skills that you learn, but it's actually you become you end up having to learn an awful lot of different types of skills, which can be useful in all sorts of different walks of life. And I mean, as we've kind of said, this In3 group feels like a different type, it feels different to me, but I've not done another PhD. But the fact that every week we would talk all together, I didn't just have a very diverse lab in the one I was physically in, but it felt like I had this lab all across Europe that I was communicating with everybody at all the time. And then a year ago, suddenly I was communicating with my lab that I was quite close to in the same way I was communicating with you guys from the In3. So when I kind of felt like the rest of the world stopped, we kept going and kept working on things, admittedly in kind of disrupted or odd ways, but I kind of felt that we kind of had a leg up on where everywhere else was, because we'd already had this idea of, I don't need to be right next to you to be part of a lab or part of a group.
That's a reference to COVID, just in case anybody.
Oh yes, in case in the year 2250 you discover this podcast, there was a pandemic last year ongoing. But yeah, that's what I've got to say.
So last but not least will be Susanna.
We have some more people if they turn their cameras on.
There is, I think I see Shreya and Liadis and Anna as well, and Leonie and Vidya. They just don't have their cameras on. So Susanna, you're not last, I hope.
Okay. No, I will talk in. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Why did I start the PhD? So I did a master in pharmaceutical. I did a master in biopharmaceutical science because I thought there would be more money there. But actually, I realized when I was doing my thesis that I still liked the toxicology field, because while the biopharmaceutical is really about drug development, I thought actually, what about the prevention of the problems? And that's what I really got compelled in toxicology, actually understanding what causes the diseases or most of the health issues. And I thought also because it's then not just focused on humans, but it's focused, you could really transport that for the whole environment and animals. And I always was in between this health, but actually of the whole ecosystem. So I did my master thesis, and then because, as Carolina said, I had the idea more that I wanted to do a PhD, but I knew that it was not going to be in Portugal. I think both for money reasons, and I thought, even if you have good scientists, if you don't have a laboratory with good resources, it's very tricky. You can be amazing work 7 days a week and still not get the same results. So I actually applied also for the traineeship in a JRC, and it was really nice because still there I only did in vitro work, but the internship was just about working, basically programming in R, which I never did. So, but it was so nice that they actually gave me the chance for 5 months just to work on this and learn about kinetics. And I think, this was really the reason why I got in the PhD, because then for coincidence, I was looking for PhDs in Netherlands, because I heard it was a good country for doing the PhD in terms of monetary reasons, but also it's a really good country, I think, for toxicology and environmental science area. And for a coincidence, I actually found this PhD position in Ninka's group, and I already knew Ninka because we were collaborating with her in JRC. So that's basically how it proceeded, and naturally. And but I think I also have to say, I mean, for me, I knew I wanted a PhD because I did like research, and I think I was a better student when I was doing things in the laboratory and practical than actually just studying for things. So I thought, I mean, if I'm good at this, maybe the PhD, which is mostly involves actually just practice work, then I'll be better. But I think I also, it is kind of normalized in my family to do the PhD, which I'm not sure how much of my own will was in this, in the sense that if it's normalized, because my brother did a PhD and is doing the postdoc, my mother did the PhD, my 2 cousins are doing the PhD or finished the PhD. My grandfather and my uncle are professors. So it's also, I feel like, I don't know if I ever like consider other pathways.
I think that would be particularly unusual.
I'll be probably judged. And also because I'm the only girl like in this generation right now. So if I was the only one not doing the PhD, I'm afraid of what that would settle for, what that would say. No, but I think it actually, there's been going, I think, quite nicely. And I think a lot of the things were exactly as I thought, in the sense, like, I think I learned a lot and about the scientific part, but again, also management and how to communicate with other scientists. And of course, I think that there was a lot of challenges. I think besides the normal challenges of a PhD, I think is like the fact that you're in another country. In this case, I maintain a relationship in the distance. And I think we also have a pandemic, which I think is not super traditional. So it was interesting to get all of this working in the middle of this. But I think also in the end, you get much more trust that things will, that you can do things. And and that you can realize the projects. And I think basically you have more resilience in the end. I mean, at least I can say in my case, I created more resilience because I think if you keep going and keep making the effort, if things not going, you will find something in the end. And of course, like also having like a supportive team and having supportive family. But I think because of all of this, I mean, my idea for now, it is meant to maintain myself in academia, I think, to do research at least. So the idea is to probably start a postdoc in January, if I can do my PhD in time. Actually keep working on this area, toxicokinetics. And because basically I think it's such a complex area and there's so much to learn that I would really be happy that I can keep growing and just building stuff in this area. I don't completely know if I will stay in academia forever, but I think even if eventually I go to regulation or something, I think all of what I'm learning now, is a great, they are great skills, I think.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Susanna. I don't think you have a typical family situation.
No.
I have one cousin who did a PhD.
No. Doesn't help. And my boyfriend is also doing the PhD. I mean, it's very tricky. I don't know what I would talk with people, actually.
My dad's father. So my family originated from the west of Ireland, and the idea in the west of Ireland was, you know, if you were lucky, if you had a priest and a doctor in the family. And my granddad was a bit disappointed. My dad's dad, when we came out, 2 of his grandchildren had PhDs, because he said, What's the point of this doctorate? Because you can't even make a prescription.
Yeah, seems very how do you call it, like elite, that useless elite, right?
Let's see if we can engage the rest, which they don't have their cameras on. But Anna, are you available to give your insights? There you are. Okay, so Anna comes all the way from Cuba, which I guess is a particularly cultural shock, moving to Italy. Maybe, I don't know. You say, Anna. Go ahead.
This is quite funny. This was your idea, or was it Ivo's idea to ask me? You have been insisting. So
no. We wanted to ask all of the PhDs who are on the call. So if you can give any insight, why did you do a PhD and why Marie Curie? Let's focus on those 2 things.
Wow, good question. So it's at least for me, it's really hard to answer that question. So yes, I'm coming from Cuba. I was in Italy, so my project was in Italy. The reason because I did a PhD was because I was in love of science. So that was my main motivation. from where I was at the university, I always was clear about that. And actually, I was always clear that I didn't want to work in a lab. So that's the reason, because I chose to work this in silico tools from the beginning when I was, I suppose, second year of university. And then, of course, I remember when I graduated, I started to search for a PhD. And it was quite hard because to search a PhD, you need to have internet. So I didn't have internet at that time. And I remember I had 200 megabytes per week of internet. So I wasn't able even to open the links. So I was only like doing Google something and then reading only this small, chat and looking if there was something interesting.
But
and that
just to clarify, you had internet, just a very little bit.
200 megabytes per week, yeah. Could you imagine? So that was one of the main problems I had at the beginning. I remember I was encouraged to apply for a PhD here in Europe. It's quite funny because I never considered the possibility to apply for a PhD in the USA. That was closer option, let's say. At the same time, I was thinking that it could be more accessible for me only if I applied for a PhD in America, Latin America, or something like that. But then one of my tutors that he did a PhD in Belgium and he was at the USA, he said to me, he sent me a link. Finally, I got a link. And he said, apply to this PhD. And I even didn't know what was Marie Curie Fellowship. And I didn't know the big change I was in front of my life, And then I forgot completely that application. I never considered the option to do an interview or something like that. So a few months later, when I received the invitation of Emilio asking me for an interview, I was without words. I did an interview in the street, in a park of my city, with a Wi-Fi connection, let's say, and with that Wi-Fi connection, I remember I was at the street without any place where to sit, so I seated on the floor. There were a lot of people coming around me. There was everything, the traffic, autos, motors, so everything. It was really hard to do this interview. And I remember Emilio was saying to me like, sorry, I can help you. I can hear you. I can hear you. And I was, oh my God, what I will do. So when I finished that interview, I was thinking, okay, this story finished here for sure. But no, later he said, I will call you.
What language did you do the interview in? English, I assume.
Yeah, I don't know what language. English. And actually it was really hard though, because I didn't understand Emilio's accent. He was so Italian, like toxic or not. So, so it was really hard to understand.
Well, you must have impressed.
But yes, it was wonderful. Then I got in this position, came here in Europe. It was wonderful. 8,000 kilometers from my family, 4 years here. Only one time I have been in my country since I came. And that is also to do a PhD. It's a change of life. I leave everything. I am really glad about the decision I took. I got a lot of opportunities. I could say that I did the dream of my life that was always to travel here in Europe. Actually, I have been majority of European countries just now. I have met all you in this multicultural environment, learn new languages. So a lot of opportunities. Actually, I call the Marie Curie project like all-inclusive project. It was wonderful. We had a lot of opportunities. Nobody had that kind of opportunities to take courses, workshops, conference, congress, the material for work, so to have PC and everything for your job. So resources, funding. So it was all that, all the opportunities I got to have internships at L'Oreal company. I never imagined that in my life, then to go to Liverpool to have the internship there. Just now I am doing this internship at ECA. So what can I say? It's have been wonderful. They have changed my life and my family's life in all the sense. So it is.
Are you at ECA or EFSA?
ECA.
ECA. Oh, okay, I thought you were at EFSA. So I'm just looking at the clock, Anna. Thank you very much. I just wonder if Liadis, are you available to say some words?
Yes, sure.
So Liadis is another one. In fact, the next one as well possibly comes outside of Europe. So Liadis, tell us why you applied and a little bit about your experience.
Okay, I'm Liadis. I come from Colombia. At the moment, when I applied for this Marie Curie position, I was living in Italy. I did my master's degree there. And why did I choose to do a PhD? Well, I guess doing research is my passion. I was pursuing to do a PhD for so many years, basically after I finished my undergraduate degree. And I guess I should be really thankful to my mentor at that time because he introduced me to the field of computational chemistry. And somehow he put the idea in my mind that I could do it, that why not? He showed me the path in that research group I was working. And there I discovered that doing research is something I really enjoy. And that is something I would like to do for the rest of my life, if I can say now. So that was my motivation. And I can confirm after so many years, and especially after these 4 years of the PhD, that I haven't changed my mind. It's still something I really enjoy doing it. And I'm so happy that I got this opportunity because, as my colleagues have already said before, it's a wonderful experience that not everybody that joins a PhD has. We have a multicultural environment. We have so many opportunities of traveling to different institutions to receive a training. We have the possibility to join so many different conferences and congress. So it's a very interesting experience, not just as Sarah mentioned at the beginning, and I totally agree with her, because the growth is not just scientifically or academically, it's also personal growth that comes with all this bunch of experiences we have been put through these years. Also learning how to work with so many different people with different backgrounds from different culture. This also contributes a lot to your personal and to your scientific growth. So I'm very thankful to Mariana that she gave me the opportunity to join this PhD, because definitely it has changed my life in all senses. So I'm so happy for that, for my decision at the moment.
Thanks, Liadis.
Thanks, Liadis. So I see that Vija has joined us. If I'm not mistaken, she's back in India currently. So Vija, share with us your experience.
I actually don't know where to begin because I didn't specifically want to do a PhD in the beginning, but however, I just wanted to travel to Europe to see Europe. But I was very sure that I have to stick to the field of toxicology because I did an internship after my master's. My master's was in industrial biotechnology, wherein I studied mostly chemistry and food processing and so on. But when I did an internship, it was a complete switch to cell culture, and toxicology and kidney, and that got me excited. So I really enjoyed doing data analysis and enjoy working with kidney cells for some reasons. I still love it. So it's something that make me to go to the lab to just to see the cells for some days. So that's when I decided that I should continue in the field of toxicology, and more specifically, I was looking at nephrotoxicology. So I remember searching for those keywords. So I didn't even consider looking into other opportunities. So I just searched for kidney, and then I searched for toxicology, and Paul's lab came up. So, and I saw a tiny little post on the left, I think right side of his webpage. So I didn't know. I've heard about Marie Curie, but I didn't completely know what are the benefits that comes out of the Marie Curie. But right now, I'm really glad I did that, because that was my second option. I didn't initially want to apply for the position, even though it fits in perfectly well. I thought it was a complete repetition of my previous work, but I was wrong. So, and I'm glad that I was wrong, because apart from the technical things that you learn from a PhD, as everybody mentioned, I've seen a personal growth in me, definitely, from all the stressful situation you have gone through, all the madness you did. So everything has improved me in a good way, I assume. So personally, I like it. From what I was in the first year and what I am right now, I'm definitely seeing a personal growth. So that's something I'm really, really happy about. And all the thanks to Paul, so for hiring me. And I've also been I made in those situations as well. I went to him in situations. So and he handled me well. So he handled the situation very well, and I learned from him on how to behave in certain situations. So it's really wonderful. So each of you has taught me something. So I'm really glad to be part of such a wonderful group, because I don't think anybody in the Marie Curie that I've known so far has got this very good collaborative effect. So it's very lovely. So thanks to you all for being a part of my life. And it's been amazing. I moved from India to Europe, and it was a cultural shock, even though I was in US. It was completely new, but I still had a amazing memory. It's all because of you. So thanks to each one of you here.
Thanks, Vidya, and thanks for some nice words. So, I mean, my question at the beginning was kind of, were you glad you did it? And I think everybody so far, at least enjoyed. I mean, the experience is.
Oh, we wouldn't tell you.
Well, I hope you would, because I mean, the experience is not easy anyway to do a PhD, because it's tough, and then to move is tough. And if you move very far away from home, and then we had the COVID. And sometimes mostly experiments don't work as you envisaged. So it's not an easy experience in any case. So very quickly, so to the PhD students, would you recommend to do a PhD to a younger sibling? I think Susanna would, because
it's mandatory. What do you mean?
It seems to be
I have two younger siblings, but they have 19 years difference. So I think maybe, I don't know, by their time, maybe everything is different. Because I think also the PhD changed a lot. I have the idea, I know like how my mother did the PhD and it was very different. I mean, she did the PhD working with 2 kids. And so I think it was a very different, well, maybe in Portugal.
So is there anybody who would not recommend doing a PhD?
Well, so, I mean, Christian here, I would definitely advise people to think hard about whether to do PhD. I definitely don't think it's an automatic thing. And as I said, for me, this is the only PhD that I would have done this type of very let's say, intense collaborative PhD where a lot of things is happening. So I don't think that going for PhD is an automatic thing at all. I think because I see many people, and we discussed this a lot of times, I think, I see many people who do PhD just automatically because they don't know what to do with their life, and they are just, okay, I'll do PhD. So I don't think that's a good decision. But I mean, for this type of, I mean, let's be honest, as I mentioned, this is probably one of the best possible ways to do PhD, with a lot of collaboration, a lot of new skills, a lot of new interactions, and regular PhD is something people need to think about. At least that's what I think.
I tend to agree with you, Christian, that this is a little bit different than a regular PhD because of the integration and the collaboration. Because it's traditionally, or at least in my opinion, it's traditionally kind of thought of if you do a PhD, which is not necessarily correct either. If you do a PhD, that you would stay, or at least attempt to stay in academia. And I don't think this was the impression I had from in this project. I think people might still have an open mind if they want to stay in academia or go to the commercial world, or even start their own companies. So, Suzanne, I think, no, it wasn't. It was Carolina said that you definitely would like to move to the more commercial world, right?
Yes.
And the company. And do you think, though? I mean, try and keep on the topic of this kind of an integrative PhD. Do you think that then moving on into a more non-academic branch of the employment sector, has this PhD given you those skill sets? You think, will you have an advantage?
Well, I think yes. That's why I wanted to do this particular program, not In3, but Marie Curie.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There's this. So, for example, I'm in a university, but Zara is in a company. So even though I'm not there working, I can see through her what it's like to work in a company doing research. So even though I don't have the direct experience, I can see through the others. And in the end, we also work with deadlines. We also work talking with people. It's very collaborative, as Christian has said. And that's what industry is asking for, is people that can communicate within pairs, and people that don't necessarily work in the same things. We need to be able to communicate. And if we learn something in this project was to communicate. And I mean, I also had the opportunity to go to L'Oréal and to see a company working. So I think it's you have always, so it depends on how we will do the PhD. I entered with the idea, okay, I will do this in academia, but then I want to move. So I took as much advantage as I could from it to help me in my future. And then just to add a note about if I would tell my youngest sibling to do a PhD, if he wanted to do a PhD, yes, I would support him. But if he is realizing what is to do a PhD, because if it's just to say that he has a PhD, then I'm sorry, but that's not a good reason. But if he wants, if it will help him for his future, yes.
Yeah, I think the motivation you really need to ask them. I mean, I'm a bad case because I just did it because I didn't have any opportunities. I was simply asked one day and I said okay. Which is fine too. It worked out, I guess. Sarah, you're interesting for me because you did your PhD in an SME, and I guess you have your own thing you want to say. But also, I'd like to hear. Do you think that's an advantage or a disadvantage? But go ahead. Whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So I wanted to say at first about telling to people if they want to do a PhD or not. I would say if you can, do it, because it's not easy. And also at the first year of my PhD, I was always asking myself, is it really worth doing PhD does it really have a progress or impact in my life? What's the difference if I was working in this company that I'm doing my PhD or doing a PhD here? But now I can say that there was a really big difference, because there has been some moments that you have been the only responsible person for something which happened. And this could change your project, your maybe even your life. And these hard moments were the moments that really helped me grow myself. And now, as I can compare myself to myself 3 years ago, it's not only about the skills I learned, it's about to be critical, and it's about how to be able to handle some situations, which I'm sure that would be really, really helpful for my future careers. So this was from the first thing about working in SME. Actually, that I'm so lucky. So in my case, I was so lucky. So I don't know if all the SMEs are like this and the bosses are this nice. But for me, it was a really advantage. I mean, I didn't do my PhD never in university, but when I compare, yes, I understand that sometimes I'm missing the university atmosphere, because I'm missing maybe some journal clubs that we are reading papers. Maybe sometimes I'm a bit far from it. I'm missing some university atmosphere with other PhD students, maybe talking more about the progress in a specific field of study that I'm doing my PhD. But at the other hand, I learned how to handle some situations alone, because I was alone, the only PhD student. And I was working with my bosses who they were students and they were successful to open a company with their ideas, which helped me a lot to grow
So with that experience now, would you, in your next steps, would you think now to like the idea to stay on this small commercial level, which is a real challenge, to stay at an SME level, or to move on to a bigger company, or actually to go and look for a postdoc somewhere? What would your, you don't have to be specific, but what's your ideology on that?
Yeah, actually, the next step of my decision won't be to do a postdoc. But what I'm thinking, because I thought a lot about going to a bigger company, in a big industrial company, but then I thought, because of some ideas that I had that I still have to make the ideas work with my bosses, I decided to stay with people who I know that I can trust them and they trust me. And then together we can make bigger movements.
Maybe together you can develop a new SME where you're the chair.
Maybe, yeah.
Bring in some investment. Just to go back to bring Ivo in here, because Ivo also had a similar experience, because you were at an SME. Well, not a similar experience, but the same setting, that you're in an SME, but in England.
Yeah.
What do you think that's an advantage, a disadvantage? I guess it depends on the person, but go ahead.
Well, for me, in my case, I can say it was a major advantage, because when I started my PhD, we were only 3 people in the company. So
that's a small SME.
It's a small SME, but today there are 30 people. So it massively grew.
It's a big SME now.
Yeah, it massively grew over the PhD period. And it kind of gave a focus to my PhD to make a product for them. So there was always the commercial side of it, and I could see how the company grew, what they did, what is important and what isn't in this aspect. And I actually really liked it, which is why I continued in this side. Like, I started the company In3 Solutions, and for me it was definitely way better than doing it just in academia, because I was in between both actually. It was a part academic lab and part SME.
So will your company, if it survives the nascent years, would you take Marie Curie students?
Of course. I would love that. If I ever have the opportunity to have
excellent. Max, we should have patented the name and sold them the name. So that was a mistake. So I guess we're exhausting it. Max or Mariana, would you like to say anything?
It was also a pleasure to collaborate in this project, also for the PIs, I think, not just for PhD students. And it was really nice to give opportunity to all these young people. That would be all.
Thanks, Mariana. Okay, the last words are with you, Max, then, unless one of these here has something really important to say. I don't see any hands up. Max.
Yeah, it might not sound like it for the people who's going to listen to the podcast, but this podcast will be the very last podcast we recorded of the very last meeting of the In3. And based on that, I will invite every single one of you to join Paul and myself for recording another podcast in 1 year by now, because I have planned to visit Paul anyway, as I do every single year in July. And I'll do that next year. And next year, I will invite you to join us for recording a podcast, which will be a follow-up on what happened next. What did they become? Did they all graduated? Did Ivo finally shaved his ridiculous mustache? Follow us in the next episode to know the truth.